Now please join me in welcoming to the stage our wonderful President and CEO of the Tri-Cities Visitor and Convention Bureau, Chris Watkins. Chris will be presenting the 2017 Tourism Industry Update.
Okay, I know that we have confused some of you because for many years we were facing the other side of the room. So for those of you that we've confused, I'm very sorry. But we did want to just do a couple things differently, and most certainly I hope that this setting is working just great for you. I want to thank you all for attending the Tri-City Visitor and Convention Bureau's 43rd annual meeting. Each year in preparation for this meeting, we choose a theme. And this year's theme is Waves of Change and Oceans of Opportunity. And this was particularly meaningful in the local travel and tourism industry because we've had to adapt and overcome the changes that a post-stimulus economy have presented. From 2009 through 2011, the Tri-Cities enjoyed a tidal wave of increased business travel, thanks to close to $2 billion in stimulus dollars. However, late in the fourth quarter of 2011, the tide began to turn, and the programs funded by stimulus came to an end. And by early 2012, many businesses, including our local hoteliers, were feeling the effects of the absence of stimulus. It's not that the local tourism industry is performing poorly. The Tri-Cities region is still experiencing a 61% hotel occupancy, which is still outperforming many communities throughout the state of Washington. And also, if you review 2012's performance to pre-stimulus years, hotel revenues grew by 7%. So even those 2 years were down, we are in a better place than we were prior to stimulus dollars. And so Waves of Change and Oceans of Opportunity is a well-timed theme. In the next few minutes, I'm going to outline the programs and strategies that the Visitor and Convention Bureau has in place to navigate these waves of change and how we will prosper given the opportunities before us. And I believe that the most important component required to successfully negotiate the daily changes and challenges that face any organization is to create a strong base. And the foundation of the Visitor and Convention Bureau is our board of directors and our many volunteers and members. But the second is the platform created by the staff. And it is this group of people that guide us through changes and who create opportunities for the tourism industry on a daily basis. This year I'm going to include the Bureau staff as part of my presentation by asking them to step to the front of the room as I outline their program so that you can put a face behind the program. Some of these folks are more visible in the community than others, but they all play such an important role in destination marketing efforts. And so I'd like to introduce them to you. And just hold your applause until I introduce them to you, as well as give a description of their programs. First, I'd like to introduce Senior Vice President Kim Schugert. Kim wears many hats for our organization, and she provides operational support to all our departments and programs. But she specializes in managing the Tri-Cities Hotel Motel Commission, which you just learned about, and the Tri-Cities River Shore Enhancement Council. The Tri-Cities River Shore Enhancement Council meets monthly and includes the staff from the cities of Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland, Benton and Franklin counties, the ports of Benton, Kennewick, and Pasco. It includes the Corps of Engineers and Bechtel Hanford as our corporate sponsor. And this has been a big year for the River Shore Enhancement Council. In February, the council introduced the Tri-Cities River Shore Master Plan 2, and throughout the year they have worked with the Corps of Engineers to facilitate better management practices for the shoreline properties leased by our cities and our ports in our counties. Now, one of the primary objectives as a Visitor and Convention Bureau is to secure conventions and sporting events for our community. I'd like to next introduce Hector Cruz, our Sports Development Director. Our sports marketing department in recent years has seen many waves, positive waves of change due to the city's investment in sports facilities and the ever-growing popularity of the Tri-Cities as a sports destination. Much of this success can be attributed to Hector's efforts and the strength of our Tri-City Sports Council, which he manages. The Sports Council also meets monthly and has many representatives from each one of the jurisdictions and has helped tremendously in securing numerous tournaments for our region. Hector is supported by Katie Trotter. You want to raise your hand, Katie? Our Group Housing and Service Coordinator. Katie manages our reservation program, our trade shows that we attend throughout the Pacific Northwest, and she assists meeting and event planners while with marketing materials and other services to ensure that they have a successful event in our Tri-Cities region. Our convention sales department is led by Holly Seiler. Attracting conventions to the Tri-Cities requires a multifaceted strategy, and given the recent economic conditions, the competition for conventions have never been more fierce. Holly leads a dedicated team of sales professionals who spend countless hours working with meeting planners, gathering proposals, and giving tours in order to highlight the Tri-Cities as the best choice for any convention. Ellie Moore and Laura Watkins represents the Bureau as sales managers, and we're very proud to have them as part of our team. And no, Laura is not related to me, but she is one heck of a good salesperson. Chelsea Petrek is the Convention Sales Department's administrative assistant. And together, the Sports and Sales Department generate nearly 200 leads per year for our hospitality partners, and on average, 150 conventions and sporting events. They really didn't rehearse that. That's kind of interesting. Go. Translating into 150 conventions and translating into $30 million of future spending for our Tri-Cities region. The next staff member is very visible and spends a great deal of time representing the Bureau out in the community. Michelle Chun is our Community Relations Director, and in addition to community events, she is an advocate for our members, making sure that they are aware of the benefits and programs available. And it's due to her diligent efforts that I'm pleased to announce that we have 750 members. The Visitor and Convention Bureau is now the second largest membership organization for a Visitor and Convention Bureau in the state of Washington. I have to say that I kept saying to Michelle about a week in advance, I said, you know, I want to say 750. I don't want to get up there and say 748, and I don't want to say close to 750. I want to say 750. So you have to go out there and get me 2 more. And so she did. She got 2 more, and they're signed. She has to have the check in the office before she can count them, so good work, Michelle. Now, for a community our size to have such a large membership, it really speaks volumes to the support of the Tri-Cities community, and to all of you, I thank you very much. Julie Moore assists Michelle in our efforts to take care of our members, as well as maintaining our 3 visitor information kiosks at the airport, at TRAC, and at the City of Richland. Now we have Jordan Youngs. He is clear over in the right hand, I guess it'd be your right hand side, and he is our Director of Media and Public Relations, but I think I'm going to go ahead and just have him stay there to operate the PowerPoint, but yeah, very good. All right, and so at this point I'm going to just say Jordan works with our public relations firm. We have a public relations firm out of Seattle that helps represent and send our message out throughout the nation. And he works with Green Rubino in pitching stories about the Tri-Cities to journalists with the goal of getting them to visit for a familiarization tour and to follow up with stories and broadcast articles, and positive ones. Year to date, we have hosted 13 journalists and had 87 positive stories about our region. In addition, Jordan manages all of our media buys, which includes $140,000 in print and internet advertising, and $60,000 in television ads that run in the Puget Sound region. Jordan is also our Facebook guru with some 12,500 followers, which positions the Tri-Cities as a destination marketing organization with one of the largest Facebook fan bases in the Pacific Northwest. Our call to action in all of our advertising is to go to our website, visittricities.com, and our website is an excellent indicator that our media outreach and advertising programs are working. And year to date, we have had over 142,000 visits to our website. This year, Jordan, Kim, and I worked together to secure the Washington Wine Country brand in conjunction with our partners at the Yakima Convention Bureau, as well as Tourism Walla Walla. We have only owned the Washington Wine Country brand for a little over 3 months and have already launched a very successful taste and tote program in conjunction with Alaskan Airlines, enterprise rent-a-car, and 240 participating wineries. I'd like next to introduce Summers Mahandro, who is our visitor information specialist. Summer greets about 4,200 guests that visit our visitor center and assists over 9,000 visitor inquiries by phone, email, and direct mail each year. In addition, she manages our calendar of events and works our weekly Your Weekend Starts Here bulletin, which has 3,040 subscribers. And if you want to know what's going about around town and you're saying, okay, there's nothing to do, get this event calendars because it really is quite informative, and there's lots of things for Tri-Cities to do. So get a hold of Jordan if that's something you're interested in. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Gretchen Guerrero, who may not be as visible as the other staff members, but in her role as operations manager, she has the very big job of making sure that our organization and all of our programs are run smoothly and efficiently. Gretchen is the glue that holds our office together, allowing us to function as an efficient destination marketing machine. As you can see, our staff and the number of programs that we offer has strategically positioned the Tri-Cities as a premier tourist, sports, and convention destination. And I'm very, very fortunate to work with this wonderful group of professionals. And now that I ask you all to join me in thanking them. Now, we'd never be able to reach the level of success if it were not for many of you in this room, our program sponsors, our supporters, our members. And I'd like to give a special thanks to the cities of Kennewick, the city of Pasco, the city of Richland, and the city of West Richland, and the city of West Richland for their investment in tourism. And I'd also like to acknowledge our diamond investors that have helped elevate tourism to an entirely new level. First, our thanks again to Washington River Protection Solutions, WRPS, Jerry Holloway, and their overall investment in all of our programs. A thanks to Bechtel, who has been our corporate sponsor of Rivershore Enhancement for the past 13 years. For Battelle for sponsoring our Heritage and Eco-Tourism programs for the past 12 years. For Mission Support Alliance, MSA, for sponsoring our marketing and media outreach. For Washington Closure Hanford for sponsoring our public relations program, and the Three Rivers Convention Center and Toyota Center for not only their sponsorship of the convention marketing efforts, but also their hard work in helping us to put on this event this evening. In addition, I'd like to thank Lloyd Swain at the back of the room with Charter Communication for recording this evening's meeting, which will be televised on Charter Cable Channel 3. So this concludes my industry report to the membership, and thank you all for being such a great audience. And now, it's my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Brad Worthley. I first learned of Brad through one of our meeting planners, and he came highly recommended, and we first hired him earlier this year to address a group of meeting planners who was our customers over in Olympia at our annual customer luncheon in Olympia in February. His presentation was so informative that we wanted to bring the message home, and we felt that if our community elevates the importance of customer service, not only will the hospitality and tourism industry benefit, but commerce in every sector will benefit as well. Brad is the author of several books, including Simple Steps to an Extraordinary Career and Life, and Simple Steps to Exceeding Customer Expectations. He was rated as one of the top 4 keynote speakers in the world by Meeting Professionals International in 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Brad Worthley.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Hello. Wow. This is a different view from down there. I didn't know you were all here. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I really do appreciate it. And I love the theme, Oceans of Opportunity. The wonderful thing about our country is we are abundant in opportunity. Over the last 37 years, I've created 7 companies from scratch. So I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, maybe like some of you in this room. So I like starting businesses up. And the wonderful thing, again, about our world is we get to do that. The thing about opportunity, though, is it does require change. If you're a manager of people, or if you're a leader, or if you're a business owner, you have to be embracing change. Change is absolutely critical. But the conundrum, of course, is that change is very difficult for human beings. You probably heard that people don't like change. And that's actually very true. We're pretty resistant to change for really a number of reasons. And I'll talk about those a little bit more in a few moments. But the one encouragement I would have for you right away is that I would encourage every single one of you to take time, whether you're a one-person company or whether you've got hundreds of employees, take time out of your schedule to put yourself into a room away from TVs, away from phones, and strategically plan your business. Take the time to work on your business, not just in your business. Does that make sense? Sometimes we get so caught up in working in our business, we're just working and working, trying to keep the dream alive, that we forget to sit back and actually work on our business. So taking the time to actually strategically plan it allows you to be able to take charge of your business. Design the destiny for your organization. Decide what it is you want from your company. Make it a plan, a strategic plan of how you're going to get there. If you don't take control over your company will continue to take control over you. And for some of you, again, that's not great news, especially in this economy. We have to work a little bit harder than we probably ever have before. And one of the challenges with change is that we have this fear of the unknown. In other words, we have a fear about change because with change comes the possibility for failure. Whenever you think about taking some emotional risk and you want to open another location, you hear this little voice in your head that goes, but what if? What if it doesn't work? And you kind of go, oh yeah. So sometimes that but what if monster, that inner saboteur can hold us back. The interesting thing about fear, the definition of fear is the anticipation of pain. Think about what fear is. Fear is simply you are anticipating pain. It's not pain itself that's challenging. It's your anticipation of it. When your supervisor says, can I talk to you in my office? Your heart starts going, right? Because you're anticipating what that conversation is going to go like. It's interesting that we are in our worst state of fear or anxiety when we're simply thinking about the possibilities that exist. Some of you will not embrace opportunities. Some of you will not take the opportunities granted to you because this little voice in your head is saying, but what if? And that fear, the anticipation of the possibilities of failure, are going to drive you back to nonconformity. They're going to drive you back to non-action. You are going to talk yourself out of doing some really powerful things in your life or with your business because of the possibility that there might be some failure. Interesting thing is 97% of the things that we worry about never come true. But yet we are still caught up sometimes in that wave of possibility that might exist. And fear is interesting because fear can mask itself. It's not just, Halloween type of spooky fear. Fear can be many things. Fear can be anger. Maybe you've told your kids hundreds of times not to go into the street. All of a sudden, you see one of them kick a ball, it runs off towards the street, and you see them running into the street, and you yell out of anger. That's simply just fear, just mask. It's the anticipation of your child being injured that might terrify you. Panic, control. What do controllers fear, by the way? Loss of control. Ironic, isn't it? Obsession, jealousy, depression, pessimism, nervousness, apprehension. All of these things are fear-based. It is simply the anticipation of. And perfectionist, you are adorable because you try to convince everybody that being a perfectionist is a really good thing. It's fear. It's fear of not being good enough or the fear of failure. Interesting enough. So we probably have some bankers in the room, and you guys love acronyms. So here's some acronyms for you in the room. False evidence that appears real. That's what fear is. It is simply false evidence that appears real to you. So you decide you're going to maybe commit to a 25% increase in sales next year, and all of a sudden you hear that voice in your head, it goes, 25? Are you kidding me? And it tries to talk you out of it. The interesting thing is that we will set sales goals. We will set expectations low for ourselves because we're afraid of what? Failure. The reality is you have the capacity, you have the ability, you're capable of greatness, but we self-sabotage ourselves because of this. Because of simply just stories that we create in our head that actually are not even real, which is the irony behind it. The one thing I would ask all of you to give consideration to is take a look at what your unique differentiating factor is in terms of your business. What is it that separates you from your competition? What is so unique about your business that you can actually look across the table at somebody when they ask you, who's your competition? You can look at them and say, you know what? I don't have any. I don't. And here's the reasons why. That's not easy to do, especially with commoditized industries. Banking, real estate, accounting. There's a lot of industries that, again, a lot have, technically the same stuff. And so it's really hard to separate yourself. And of course, that's where customer service becomes one of your unique differentiating factors. But ask yourself the question, again, if you are, what can you say or what can you do that will help completely remove you from your competition? As I mentioned, I've started 7 companies, but I started every one of them with the intent that I wanted to make sure that I could make myself completely distinguishable so I could say I have no competition. If you're in the heating and air conditioning industry, if you have a residential customer call up and want you to come out to their house, are you going to email them in advance, let them know what your truck looks like so when it pulls in the driveway, they recognize it and they're ready for you? Are they going to send a photograph of the person who's going to do the service work so that we develop a familiarity? So if it's a single woman, she again feels a comfort about knowing who's coming to her door. When you get to the door, you're going to stop and put booties over your work boots. So when you walk into their house, you're showing respect for their carpet. What are the individual unique steps that you're going to do in your business to completely separate yourself from your competition? At least give that some consideration. There's an organization, and the reason, by the way, for a unique differentiating factor, the reason to be able to do these things that are unique that other people are not doing is because you want to have people talking about you. You want to have stories. You want to have people walk away and go, wow, they're fabulous. The reason is because there's 3 different types of customers that we deal with. The first type of customer is the type of customer that walks away from us and goes, wow, they're unique. Boy, they do stuff differently. These are customers who we call advocates. Advocates are wonderful because they love us, and of course we love them. They're very loyal. But the greatest thing about them is that they are also great promoters. They tell other people about us. You can only end up with advocates if in fact you're willing to step out and do things that others are not willing to do. They have to recognize your customers that you are unique, that you are different. It gives them something to talk to other people about. That's how you build your business. Unfortunately, 80% of most customers, they're customers what we call apathetic. Apathetic customers, they walk out satisfied. They come into your restaurant. They walk out full. They're satisfied, but they didn't have any great interaction with anybody. There was no great human interaction of any sort. They come into your bank to get money. They cash their check. They walk out with money. So they're satisfied because they've got their money, but they're not helping you grow your business. The worst thing you can do to your business is seek customer satisfaction, because satisfaction is leaving money on the table. This is where our opportunity lies. Taking these people who are apathetic customers that come in your door, doing something that they expect, but more important, doing something they don't expect, so we can drive those apathetic customers to becoming advocates for our business and help grow. The last group, they're also talkers, unfortunately, but they're assassins. These are people who come in. Things did not go as planned, and what they do, of course, is they will tell other people about your service, but it's not a good story. And of course, they'll try to destroy your brand, which is not good. There is one organization that I've been an advocate for many, many years. I've been a professional speaker for 22 years, and I talk about them every time I speak almost. And they're a little mom and pop organization you're probably going to be familiar with. It's an organization called Les Schwab Tire Centers. Anybody in this room, by the way, a Les Schwab customer? Raise your hand if you're a Les Schwab customer. Look around the room. Yeah. Wouldn't you like to have that much control and domination of your industry? It's impressive. But they didn't get there simply, again, just by, taking things for granted. They're leaders, in terms of changing behavior and doing things that others maybe are not willing to do. Many of you know, of course, they'll change anybody's flat tire for free. And that's how I ran into them originally, is they changed my flat tire. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe that someone would work on my car for 20 minutes and not charge me. I thought that was insanity. Matter of fact, just about 6 months ago, I was driving up 405 in Seattle, pouring down rain, torrential rain. And I'm in my car, and I'm in a suit. I'm going to a seminar. All of a sudden, my right front tire blows out. I've never had a tire blow out and almost come off, so I just had seconds to pull over along the road. There was a big metal railing on this side of my car, only about a foot of space between me and it. The white line of the road was right outside my door. It was really narrow. I couldn't even get out of my car because trucks were flying by me, semi-trucks, and it was terrifying. So I thought, okay, I am terrified. I'm in a state of fear. Who do I call? Les Schwab. Let's give them a shot. So I called Les Schwab up. They came down. They pulled the truck in behind me. They put cones out. He put a hard hat on, and he changed my tire in the pouring torrential rain. I never even got out of my car. I just rolled the window down and said, "Thank you." That was it. They are an amazing organization because they do a number of things. Of course, they'll rotate your tires for free, change your, check your air pressure, they'll check your brakes for free. They do all these things. And for those of you who are good Les Schwab customers, you got to love the popcorn as well as I do. I just sit there and eat the popcorn sometimes. Mr. Worthley, you need help? No, I'm golden. Coffee all day long, again, it's free. They do all these things. Is that convenient? Heck no! It's not convenient to be going trying to keep the popcorn made all day and people are spilling it. You got to clean it up and you got to have the coffee pot full all the time. Is it convenient? Absolutely not. Be very cautious about when you're looking at what you can do for your customers or your guests, because in most cases it's not going to be convenient. Are you willing to stand up to greet your guests or your customers every time they come through the door? That's not really convenient. But yet they might go, "Wow, you stood just for me." That was pretty impressive. So a lot of these things, again, that make the customers go, "Wow," are not really convenient for us. But that's really when you start to make an impact. And this organization freaked me out about probably 7 years ago. I just didn't think they could do anything more or be any better. But I pulled in to have some brake work done. So I pulled in the parking lot. Now I am facing the highway. The building was actually behind me. I pulled in and I went to put my car into park. I just glanced up in my rear view mirror and I noticed there was a young man outside working on a car. I saw him look up at me. I saw him throw his tools to the ground and he comes running full blast for my car. I'm thinking my car's on fire. It's scary. So he shows up, whips open the door, and he greets me. And I thought, wow, you got to be new, or it's review day. I didn't know what. But he walks me inside, nice kid, went inside, sat me down, and I sat and I watched. Every car that pulled into the parking lot, somebody jumped up and ran to greet the car in the parking lot. And I thought, wow, can you imagine how that went over when they had to announce that to all the employees? Imagine that meeting. Hey, we got a great idea. Now stick with me on this one. You're going to start running for the car tomorrow. Now, I actually asked the young man that was waiting on me, I said, "What was that like when you found out you're going to have to run for a car?" He says, "Oh, that was not good news. You kidding me? I'm trying to get work done. Customer pulls in, what a huge inconvenience. I've got to drop tools and run for a car. That was not good." He says, "But after a few days of doing it," he says, "I found out what was in it for me. And then it was okay." And I said, "What did you find out?" He says, "Well, actually, it got to be so darn much fun to run to the car, whip that door open, and see that customer looking at you like that." He said, "That was fun." He says, "I found out the better I treated the customer, the better they treated me." And that's the beauty of great customer service, is it makes your day better too. And you know, it's not always the big things. Matter of fact, a friend of mine who's also a professional speaker, he and I were talking about how when you come back off a business trip, sometimes you can't find your sock or both of them, or you can't find your underwear. It's just like a bad washing machine sometimes. You don't know where they are. So he was in New York. He said he was decided he was going to check out of this hotel, and he wanted to just make sure there was nothing missing. So he decided to check under the skirting to the bed. So he got down his hands and knees. He lifted up the skirting to the bed to look underneath and see if there was any of his stuff underneath there. And underneath the bed, there was a pyramid sign. It was a lot like this, and on the sign it said, "Yes, we look under here too." It's not always the big stuff, right? So, exceeding people's expectations is really, it's about perception. It's about how the customer perceives us in our business. And that's the most important thing. It's their perception that truly does count. If you wanted to take your significant other out to a fine dining experience, you might pull up out in front of a restaurant. You're trying to decide if you want to go in there or not. You look at the outside of the building. paint's been chipped and cracked, hasn't been painted for about 20 years probably. You look at the windows, the sun's shining on them and you can see kind of a sheen of grease on the inside, like no one's touched those for a while. The open sign's kind of cockeyed. You go up to the front door, it's all glass, and you can see fingerprints all over the front door. Now, I don't know about you, but my perception is if you can't take care of the stuff that I can see, what are you doing to the stuff that I can't see, like the kitchen? I'd get grossed out. I call the place a dive, I'm not going in. The reality is food might be fabulous, but my perception becomes my reality. I go into a bank. There's 4 teller windows at that bank. There are 3 tellers working the windows. That means there is 1 empty window. There are 15 customers lined up waiting for assistance. Standing behind the tellers is a branch manager just doing some busy work. Guess who all 15 customers are staring at? The manager, right? They're looking at the manager, the empty window. Manager, window, manager, window. They're getting all fired up because they're thinking, wait a minute, if you're qualified to be behind those tellers, you got to be qualified to be one of them. Out, get your rear end up in that window and bring this line down, and we'll punish you for that. Those 3 tellers that are working diligently, they're looking at each other going, why is everybody so grumpy? Well, look behind you. That's the problem. It's what we call TLC. Think like a customer. Look at your business differently. Watch your employees work. What are the things that they do? What are some of the behavior habits they have that are leaving bad messages or bad perceptions? A friend of mine, another professional speaker named Tom Asacker, he wrote a book called Sandbox Wisdom. And in the book, he tells a story about a little girl riding around a pickup truck with her grandfather. And as they're riding around this pickup truck, little girl says, in a small town, little girl says, hey, Granddad, can we get some candy at the candy store? Well, Granddad goes, absolutely. So they pull up downtown. And Granddad looks, and there was a candy store on this side of the street, but there was also a candy store on this side of the street. Granddad goes, well, which one do you kids go to? Little girl says, oh, we always go to one on this side of the street. She's a nice lady. She gives us extra candy. He said, well, that's really nice. He says, how about the other store? Little girl goes, she's a mean lady. She takes candy away from us. I thought that's weird. So anyhow, Granddad, they went in the good candy store, the nice candy store. They ordered half a pound of her favorite hard candy. This lady was nice. She took a small scoop of candy and she put it up on the scale. And she took small handfuls of candy and she brought it up to a half a pound. She put it in the bag and gave it to the little girl. They walked out happy. Granddad, of course, being very curious, he wanted to go see what the other store was about. So he goes in the other store with her and orders a half a pound of the exact same candy. This lady was nice too. She had the same candy at the exact same price. However, this lady, she took a large scoop of candy and put it up on the scale, and she took small handfuls and brought it down to a half a pound. Now, if you didn't get this, you'll get it right around midnight. The kids are just watching the hand. That's all they see. They see this lady's hand going up to the scale. They are thinking, bonus time. They see this hand coming off the scale. She's whipping us off. So, of course, their perception is this because they're getting candy here and they're getting it taken away here. So this store over here is doing fabulous. They're just making a great living. This store is going out of business. She can't figure out why. It's simply because sometimes of our behavior habits and the way we do things, and more importantly, it's how the customer perceives those. Matter of fact, I want to give you a perception test. I'm going to put a paragraph up here. It'll take you about 20 seconds to read, and I want you to count the number of F's. That's all you have to do. Just read it and count how many you get. And I'm going to ask some of you how many you got, by the way. Easy, right? Nailed it? Okay. I just want you to yell out what you got. Why don't you start on this end over here? Why don't you go to tell me how many you got? Just yell it out. Just pick something.
Okay, 35.
There you go. 27. 31. 33. How many? 29? 30? Okay, you can see if we went around the entire room, we're going to have about 30 different perceptions about what we saw, right? We're looking at the exact same thing, but you can see every single one of those was different, and if I went around this room, it would be the same way. I'm actually going to help you cheat. Let's try it again one more time. I'll help you cheat. Much easier, right? Okay, first row. How many you get? 32? How many you get? 34? 33? 33? 32? I help you cheat, and we still can't agree. There was 34 the first time, and there was 34 the second time. I didn't change it on you. But my point is the fact that, again, that I even help you cheat, everybody's looking at the exact same thing, but we have all these different perceptions. So imagine people walking into your business or doing business with you. Think about how many different perceptions. If you have 50 customers a day, how many perceptions of you are there? 50. So if you're going out there every single day to simply just meet your customers' expectations, you're going to fall short. You're going to have a tremendous amount of apathy, and you might even have some assassins. Our brain mentality must be that we must find ways to exceed every single person's expectations. We must find a way to do what they expect and then one thing they do not expect. We must learn to exceed people's expectations. That's the bar for us. Because if we do fall a little bit short because of perception, at least we're not going to create any assassins for any reason. And the thing about perception is it's all about judgment. Because, human beings, we're judging machines. We really are. I mean, we are just judging machines. We don't intentionally do it, but it's just kind of one of those things that under the radar screen, we do it. On the telephone, for example, when you in your business, if you've got somebody, by the way, who is in charge of answering your telephones, my highest recommendation is anytime you are hiring anybody to do phone work, is interview them over the telephone first. Don't bring them in for an in-person interview. Don't waste your time. Have a telephone interview first. Because if you do not like their phone voice, why would you hire them? They are the ambassador for your organization. On the telephone, they are now in the shoes of your brand. They represent your brand. They are the ambassador for you. Pick selectively. Make sure that somebody that's answering your phones has a friendly phone voice. Because the numbers are a little bit staggering, but 14% of how you are judged when you pick up a phone, 14% are the words you use. But 86% is your voice inflection. It's the quality of your voice. We are going to determine sometimes whether we want to do business with you or not simply based on the quality of your voice. And that might seem unfair, but that's what we do. So if you hire somebody who has not got a good phone voice, you set yourself with a lower bar. You've got somebody now in the position that maybe should not be there, that might impact your brand. And you can't go to them and say, I want you to change your voice. That's hard to do. I mean, there are some things you can do. Admittedly, for some people, you just might have them raise the volume of their voice a little bit. Some people speak softly so they sound respectful. Thank you for calling Brad Worthley International. This is Brad. How may I help you? Well, to other people, that might sound like you are lacking confidence, like you're unfriendly or you're indifferent. So that's not great for you. So for some of you in this room, just inject about 10% more volume into your voice. Thank you for calling. This is Brad. How may I help you? You might even feel like you're yelling into the phone because you've got a behavior habit of volume. You're not used to talking that loud. But the person on the other end of the phone is starting to feel differently about you. Their perception is changing. They believe that you are more friendly, you're more compassionate, you're more enthusiastic. And that might serve your business well. The only other way to change your voice is through voice inflection. It's the range of your voice. But that's really hard to change. If you try to change your voice, you're going to sound dorky. Trust me, you will. Matter of fact, when I graduated, anybody familiar with Hoquiam High School, 1972? That was my class. And I was one of the smaller kids in my class. I did not grow till I got out of school. And I had a kind of a high, pitchy voice. So I graduated from high school. I moved up to Seattle. I was managing stores. I'm 23 years old, but I still got this high, squeaky voice. And I didn't realize how bad it was until one night, about 7:30, a sales lady calls. I pick up the phone and she says, "Is your mother there?" What? Really? I thought, okay, well that's got to change. So I decided to work on my voice a little bit. And you guys familiar with Cheech and Chong? Yeah? If you don't remember them, you were probably still there. Cheech and Chong. Cheech and Chong had one of their first CDs out, and it had this little disc jockey routine in it. And so what I did, decided I was going to memorize it, and I was going to use it to help influence my voice and change my voice. So I practiced for an entire year, and it went like this. Hi there, groovy guys, groovy gals, peace, love, dove, beads, bells, incense, crass pads, light shows, and Hare Krishna to all you groovy freaks out there. Digging right on, empower the people. All you kids out there having a good time tonight, hey, far out and solid. Write that down. Kidding. I actually did that for a whole year, though, to try to get my voice, to change. And what a blessing, of course. I ended up in a profession where I do use a lot of voice inflection, and I do change my voice quite a bit. If you come to my house for dinner, I'm not going to say, "Hey, you want a cocktail?" I reel it way back at home. I'm actually not allowed to talk this way at home, so it's different. In person, the way we judge each other. 7% of how we judge each other when we meet each other are the words we use. Sit. I see you. You're standing in front of me. You're talking. But 7% of how I'm judging you are the words. 38% is the voice inflection. It's the quality of your voice again. I see you. You're standing in front of me, but I'm still listening for the inflection in your voice. I'm trying to validate if the words that you're using match the inflection. And 55% of how we judge each other is what we looked like. We're looking at how you're dressed, how well you're groomed, how you speak with your hands, the kind of eye contact you provide. You walk around with your shoulders rolled back with power and presence as a leader of people. And so our brain's just going constantly as we judge each other. And again, it may seem unfair that 55% of how we're judged is what we look like. But that's why if you have a brand, whether or not it's polo shirts or whether or not, it's overalls, whatever it is, if an employee shows up and they do not represent your brand well, send them home. Protect your brand. It's an important message to the employees. You are held to a high standard here. And I want to make sure that we protect our brand because of it. Now, I don't like doing dorky things at sessions like this, but I will ask you to do one thing for me. You don't have to get up. There's no group hugs. There's no share time, so that's a different seminar totally. But I would like you to sit right there and put your hand up in front of you like this. Just pick the OK sign up, and this is going to take like 5 seconds. So just follow me quickly. Just put it on top of your head really quickly like that, and you look fabulous. Put it on your forehead for me. Now please put it on your chin for me. See, most of you have it on your cheek. That is your chin. So as Simon says, it's worked beautifully for so many years. The whole point of that is, do we trust our ears or do we trust our eyes? We trust what we see. We trust our eyes. And so when you're in an environment, a sales environment or any type of environment, understand you might be speaking, they might be listening to some of it, but in general what they are paying attention to is what they see by the way that you present and by the way that you do things. So your presentation is very, very critical. It is something worth practicing, depending on, again, what your profession is and what you do sell. Exceeding people's expectations and developing relationships. And relationships is a huge component to businesses. See, if you are in the hotel industry, that might be considered the hospitality industry, but you're in the relationship business. If you're in the banking world, you're probably in the financial services industry, but you're in the relationship business. Every single one of you in this room is in the relationship business. Building relationships is absolutely critical to most of our survival. Your ability to be able to connect and relate with people, which is why hiring the right people, of course, is so critical. But sometimes it does not take a lot to develop relationships with people. It can be as simplistic as simply learning people's names, which is challenging for a lot of people. But even if you set a goal for yourself, set a minimum goal for yourself that you're going to learn 4 customers' names per day. That's it. Over an 8-hour shift, every 2 hours, your goal is just to remember one name every 2 hours. If you do that, though, at the end, you've got 4 people's names. At the end of the week, again, you've got more. At over time, that does add up to quite a bit. You know, remember those songs from Cheers? Everybody wants to go, where everybody knows their name. It's true. Think about places that you frequent. Think about restaurants that you go to. Think about bowling alleys that you hang out at. Think about karaoke lounges that you sing in, because I know you do. Just kidding. But think about the places that you go. A lot of the times we have relationships, we go there more frequently because we feel a relationship, a connectivity with them. One of my favorite restaurants is over in Bellevue, Washington. It's called Biz on Main. It's a French restaurant, but it's not stuffy French at all. And about 8 years ago, when I first started this business up, the owner, I didn't know anything about it. It's a small, only had maybe 8 or 10 tabletops, I think it was. And it was a teeny thing buried kind of in old Bellevue. And I would have never known what it was there, except that I had a friend say, Brad, you've got to go there. The service is phenomenal. They never said the food was phenomenal. They said service was, which is interesting. But I showed up. I had reservations. And Joe, the owner, was at the front door. And I walked in, I said, my name's Brad Worthley. I've got 7:30 reservations. And he says, Mr. Worthley, you've not been here before, have you? And I said, nope. He goes, welcome. Well, during dinner, he came to me at my table 3 times. And he would come and he would look, he'd bring the wine, and he'd come back a little while later, and he'd look me in the eye and say, Mr. Worthley, how's that wine? And I'd say, oh, it's great. He'd come back later and say, Mr. Worthley, how's that steak cooked? To your perfection? I said, yeah, it's good. So I knew what he was doing, because he was looking deep into my eyes and he was using my name. He used it like 3 times, but he used it really well. Not cheesy, he used it really, really well. And so I knew what he was doing, and I really thought it was cool because he did know most of the people in the restaurant. It was pretty impressive. 3 weeks later, I came back into the restaurant, and when I walked in the door, I didn't have reservations. I was just popping in for lunch. He looked up and he goes, hey, Mr. Worthley, it's great to see you again. My heart went, wow. What kind of a customer I become? Advocate. I immediately thought, you know, if I've got to take people out to lunch, a client out to lunch, there's 100 restaurants in Bellevue, Kirkland area, but one of them, the owner, knows my name. Where am I going to take clients? Yeah, I get to walk in the door. Joe, the owner, says, Mr. Worthley, it's great to see you back. Would you like your table by the window? I can look at my client and say, Worthley, hear that? Worthley, yeah. We like our name, as long as it's used properly. And please, you know, don't be one of those people who throws it out there. You try somebody's name and go, how did I do? Don't do that. Make sure to ask people their name, of course, first. And please do not use terms of endearment. I know some of you think those are adorable. To give you some examples, I don't want to destroy any brands here. I went to a place that changes oil quickly. I pulled in and I had my suit on, I had my car, but I was wearing a suit just like this. I pulled in and I get out of my car. Young gentleman about 21 walks towards me. He goes, yo, Chief, how you doing? Chief, really? I was at a restaurant down in Olympia. Again, I won't destroy the brand. But I was there with some friends of mine. There was three friends and myself, 4 of us sitting at a table waiting for service. The server comes up. She looks 16. I'm sure she was 21, but I've lost perspective. So she shows up, she leans over to me, she goes, so sweetie, what can I get you? Really? How about a tippy cup? Let's start with that. I mean, so avoid honey bun, sweetie, lamb chop, you know, any of those things you've got in your arsenal, please avoid those at all costs. They do not serve us well at all. You can also elevate the customer's perception of you by using what we call pedestal words. Pedestal words elevate how the customer or your client perceives you, and also how they feel about themselves. It actually has a twofold positive effect. One of the things you're going to see happen too is that when you are thanked, or your employees are thanked, 20% of you in this room, or 20% of your employees, are going to respond back with no problem. They're going to say thank you. You're going to go, oh, no problem. It's not going to serve you well to be telling all of your customers that they're not big problems. Make sense? Think about what you can do to turn that into something positive. And of course, so every time you are thanked, please train every employee in your organization when they are thanked. They look at the customer and say, you know what? It's my pleasure. My pleasure makes people feel important. It elevates their status. It makes them feel good about them, which also changes their perception of us. Instead of saying, can I help you? It's, may I help you? Very small changes, but the end result is much larger. If you have to ask a customer to do something, to sign a document, or whatever it happens to be, make sure what comes out of your mouth does not dictate. Make sure it's not telling them what to do. Make sure your customer always has choice. I would appreciate it if you could sign this document for me. Or you can be humorous about it. I would love your John Hancock, or I would love your autograph, please. You know, something, again, that makes us not feel like we're being dictated to, because that happens quite a bit in business as well. And I want to pass on, it's going to seem odd, but listening is something that I'm very passionate about, because as human beings, we're very, very poor at it. We are built incredibly poor for listening. How many of you in this room, besides people who have already read my books, but how many of you in this room have ever heard of something called the reticular activating system? Raise your hand up. A few of you. Okay, there's probably about 15 in the room. This is pretty true. If I go in a room this size, it's very unusual to have even 1 or 2 hands go up. Very unusual to have that many people that even know about it. The reticular activating system is a switch in your brain. It is located back in your brain stem. Basically, it's a bunch of loose neuron fibers that run up through your brain stem, and they span out like tree branches to parts of your brain. It can act like a filter. In other words, if you buy a brand new red Corvette, all of a sudden you notice every red Corvette on the highway. You know how that is sometimes? It creates your awarenesses, basically. You might live under an airport, and you are so used to hearing the noise that the reticular activating system basically filters it out. You have friends over, and they go, wow, it's noisy here, and you go, what, I don't hear anything. If you're a couple that has a child, a new infant, you ever wonder, ladies, how come your husband can sleep through the entire night when your baby's crying? Answers that little question for you. Men go, she'll get it. We filter it out, bam, we sleep beautifully throughout the entire night. So it's a filter, but it's also a switch. Basically, the switch goes on and off based on how much telling tension you have in your head. Anytime that you're daydreaming or you're thinking or you're processing information, it shuts the switch off, which means that you hear people's voices, but you're not retaining the information. So there's a big difference between hearing and listening. Make sense? Hearing is what some of you are doing right now. You hear my voice. Listening is you're retaining the information. Do you remember sitting in a high school classroom? Remember high school? You were in a classroom for a whole hour? You were almost certain the teacher was there because you could see the teacher walking around. Remember that? And you could hear the teacher going blah, 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 blah. You could hear him. But after an hour, you walked out of the class and you have absolutely no idea what you learned. Ever have that happen? Some of you have it going on right now? That's because anytime you're daydreaming or you're thinking about something else, your brain shuts down. It's like right now, you're all looking at me and you are adorable. However, some of you are still sitting there going, reticular what? Reticular what? So as long as your brain is active and you are processing information, it shuts a switch off, which means you hear me, but you're not necessarily listening to me. There's actually 3 different levels of listening that you should be aware of, and I would highly encourage you to pass this on to your children if they're in school, because this impacts their learning. Level 1 listening is the way that most people communicate. Level 1's unbelievably ineffective, because if I'm talking to you, if I'm actually having a conversation, I'm talking to you, what is your brain actually thinking about? Instead of listening, what's it actually thinking about? Your response. I'm talking to you, but you're not sitting or listening to me as you're thinking about what you're going to say back, or you're judging my conversation. 98% of the time in conversations, you're actually listening to yourself more than you're listening to other people. So when you get in a fight with your significant other and you're arguing, you never listen to me. No, you never listen to me. You don't. Neither one of you is. Because when you're in a fight, what are you thinking about? How are you going to win? Yeah. So we're not great listeners. Level 2 is a higher form of listening. Level 2 is basically what I will call being present. It is when the other person is talking, you're trying to keep your head empty. You are trying to stay right with their every word. Because if your head is empty, that information can flow right down into you. It's keeping your self-talk, managing that self-talk and keeping it down. But by the way, that is really hard to do. Matter of fact, for the next 10 seconds or so, stop talking to yourself completely. How's that working for you? You're looking at me, don't talk. You're doing it again, knock it off. It's very schizophrenic, I know. So level 2 is hard to achieve, but it's a managed process. It is something you have to work on all the time. When you're in conversation with somebody, just think about, don't let yourself drift away, don't self-talk, try to keep yourself present with the individual in conversation, which again is hard to do. Imagine if you're a realtor. I tell you, I want a 3-bedroom home, I want a white picket fence, I want a 2-car garage. What does your brain start doing right about then? Shopping for your inventory. You're thinking about what you have in your listings that fulfills that need. So you're sitting there shopping for inventory, and I continue to talk. I tell you I want a 1-acre lot, I want a dog run, I want a swimming pool, and you don't hear any of it. So now you take me out and you show me homes. Now I'm looking at you like, are you kidding me? You didn't listen to me. And so what I do is I go get somebody new. And the reason is, you're right, you weren't listening to me. See, if you want to talk to me about customer service, about leadership, or about business, I don't need to pre-think anything. I don't. I know enough about my craft where I don't have to sit here and be thinking about it. It's easy for me to keep my head completely empty and to stay with your every single word because I know that much about my business and my craft. And that's my encouragement to you, is if you're so busy having to think about, how you're going to sell them or what you're going to try to ram down their throat, you're working too hard. Stop it. Get rid of that conversation in your head and just try to stay with the individual. This is true even at home, with our children, with our significant others, whoever it happens to be. First, let's talk about level 3, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Level 3, by the way, level 2 is you are now listening to the other person more than you're listening to yourself. That's a big change. Level 3, it is the same thing as level 2, identical. It is you are being present in conversation with people. However, now you're also going to take it to an intuitive place. You're going to pay attention to what you see and also to what you hear. So you're going to raise your senses a little bit. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden their eyes roll up and they go, huh, what do you think's going on in their brain when their eyes roll up? They're processing, they're thinking. So if someone's eyes roll up, why would you continue to talk to them? They're not listening to you, so stop, let them process. And by the way, a lot of times they're simply just visual learners. And visual learners, you can tell, because when you ask them a question, they will look up because they're literally waiting for visualization. They want to see what you're talking about. Interesting thing about them is when you ask them a question, their eyes will roll up, and within 1 or 2 seconds, their eyes will come back and meet yours, and they will say, oh yeah, I see what you mean. They will sometimes use the words, I see what you mean, which sometimes just validates that they're visual learners. If somebody's eyes roll up and don't come back in 1 or 2 seconds, they are not visual learners, they're just totally confused. That's different. Also pay attention to what you hear. If I was checking out of a hotel and they said, Mr. Worthley, how was your stay? And if I said, it was fabulous, man, I had a good time. Well, the words and the voice inflection support each other. You would believe it. However, if I was checking out and they said, Mr. Worthley, how was your stay? And if I said, oh, it was okay. Well, no, it's not. You got that? The voice inflection didn't support the words. Even though I said it was fine, the voice inflection didn't support it. That's when the person behind the desk should reach out and go, wait a minute. I bet you we could have done more, Mr. Worthley. And what would that have been? We don't let those nuances go by. We listen, we pay attention to all of our senses to make sure. And for those, again, who have got children, when your children come home from school, when you ask them, how was your day at school? What is the one word they use 99% of the time? Fine. You know they teach that in school? It's the first thing they teach them. They sit them down and they say, if your parents ask you anything, you give them one word, fine. There'll be a test on that later. They're great with fine. Sometimes you've only got seconds to figure out if your kid had a good day or bad day. Like when my kid comes through the door, he's in high school now, the youngest one, we've got him 31 down, but we've got a 17-year-old still. He comes home, I ask him every single day, how was school today? And sometimes, again, if he goes, oh, it's fine. Well, oh, fine. Well, that's good news to me. So I'll say, go to your room, have fun. But sometimes when he comes in the door, I say, how was school? Oh, it was fine. I know it's not. I'm not going to let it go by. I'm going to tell him, have a seat. Let's talk about this. Of course, they've figured me out already. So now when I walk in the door, how was school today? Father, it was a fabulous educational experience. Thanks for asking. Go to your room. So level 3 listening is where we don't let the nuances go by. Listening to our customers, critical, but we don't. Listening to our significant others, but we don't. Listening to our children. Again, level 3. Listening to the things, not just that are being said, but listening to the things that aren't being said. Even more important. Every single employee in your organization, it is critical that they understand the message that I'm talking about today, about exceeding people's expectations. There's not one employee in your organization, I don't care how long they've been here, they might say, I've been here 20 years, you can't get rid of me. You know what? That's a kiss of death. Mediocrity, kiss of death. Every single employee should be held to high standards. Because it just takes one. Imagine, this is just a story, so I've got nothing against, this is just a story. So the name I'm going to use is simply just a story, nothing against them. But imagine you went into a hardware store, you went into like a Lowe's, and you walked in there, and all of a sudden you had a really bad experience, and that person you walked out of there dealing with this individual, it was so miserable, you looked at them and said, I'm never coming back to Lowe's again, ever. And you got home, you told your family, we are never shopping at Lowe's ever again. You went to a cocktail party that night, you told your friends, gather around, we're talking about Lowe's. And again, this is just a story, so don't hang anything against Lowe's. They're great. I shop there all the time. But let's just say that that's the way it goes. We literally will destroy an entire brand based on the actions of one. One employee will set us off to take and destroy an entire brand name. We do that. It only takes one person sometimes to make that become a reality. I've got good news, by the way, and I've got one last thing for you to read, but you don't have to count anything. Yeah, and for those of you who are dyslexic, my sincerest apologies to you. Like life wasn't hard enough as it was, right? Well, the fact there's just one E out of sync makes it pretty miserable to read. If just one employee in your organization does not understand these things that I'm talking about, if you allow them to get away with these moments of mediocrity, it can make it miserable for a lot of your customers as well, which I'm going to encourage you to not allow that to occur. I do, by the way, send out a monthly newsletter. I send out 3 customer service tips and 3 leadership tips each month. If you'd like to be signed up for that free newsletter, just drop your business card off. I've got a table just right across the hall outside here. Just drop off your business card to me and I'll sign you up for it. But you'll get tips like what we did today, a lot of the same information that might help serve you. And also, if you'd like to order them, I didn't bring books, but I did bring order forms. I do have my book here today too, which is called Exceeding Customer Expectations. It's $24.95 on my website, but it's $20 here if you'd like to order it. That'll give you all the tools to go back and make some changes in your organization. I also brought my second book, which is called Speaking of Success. This is about success in general. And I've got one chapter in here. I've also got Ken Blanchard, a leadership expert. Jack Canfield wrote the Chicken Soups. Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits. I'm actually sick of these guys riding my coattails, to be honest with you. And I got my last book, which is called Simple Steps to an Extraordinary Career in Life. This is about the inner saboteur that every single one of us has. It is about that voice in our head that always says, don't do it, it's risky. And again, this also has information on how to take a plan and strategically create success for your business. So that's my newest one as well. And then if you wanted to go back and train your employees, literally, I've got my DVD sets here today as well. And this is Exceeding Customer Expectations. It's 4 DVDs. This is my live seminar, very animated, very fun. Sit them down in front of a computer or TV. It will teach them everything they need to know. I've also got one called Turning Managers into Leaders, and I've got one called How to Coach Your Employees, Peers, and Supervisor. These are all half off as a courtesy here to the Bureau for you today if you want to take advantage of those things. So I want to thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, I'd be out there on that table across the hallway over there answering any questions you may have. Thank you so much for inviting me today. Thank you.
Brad, thank you. That was very inspiring. I just wanted to add that our staff, after I heard him in Olympia, I came back and I did buy the books. And I went ahead, and they're very short chapters, but very inspiring. So I brought one for each one of my staff. And then we took turns actually being the facilitator of that particular chapter each week until we completed the book. And it was wonderful. And then we also took certain things out of the book and practiced them. And we do that on a regular basis. So I really encourage you to do that. It really makes a big difference. I also wanted to announce that next year we will have a new award called Customer Service of the Year Award. And it's going to start in January. So when you get your newsletter, read it. And it's not just the hospitality industry. If you work for a PUD or you work for a city or a port, or a gas station, you name it. If somebody is giving you extraordinary service, we're going to be able to have you take their name down, jot it down, and we want to be able to honor them. And it starts at home, it starts with you, and it really makes a big difference for an entire community. So with this, every year we like to recognize someone or a group, and this is our Tourism Champion of the Year, who has contributed to enhancing our tourism portfolio. And the Tourism Champion of the Year Award goes to that person or that group that helps the Tri-Cities put our best foot forward. And to announce this year's award, we would like to bring our annual meeting sponsor and Diamond member, Jerry Holloway with Washington River Protection Solutions, to do the honors. Please join me in welcoming Jerry.
I'd like to take a moment to thank Chris for positioning me on the agenda right after the speaker so that you can all sit out there judging my inflection and every mannerism that I make and seeing how I compare. Just don't, please, please. In keeping with this year's theme, Waves of Change and Oceans of Opportunity, we wanted to recognize an individual or group of individuals who have not only contributed and enhanced the tourism industry, but who have also weathered the test of time, survived their own waves of change, and actually seized opportunity in the midst of a tempest. This year, we are recognizing an organization as our Tourism Champion of the Year. This year's champion is no youngster, having endured nearly 50 years in the community. The organization has achieved success and national recognition, followed by lackluster support, decline in customer confidence, and near financial ruin. Obviously, they hadn't listened to Mr. Worthley. It's a story of perseverance, determination, and adaptability. You see, the problem with riding the waves of success is that eventually every wave comes to an end. Sometimes waves even come crashing down. And that nearly happened to our tourism champion. For many years, the organization, which is largely led by volunteers, had experienced vast success, even becoming an iconic event for the entire Tri-Cities. In fact, to this day, many people's first introduction to our community is tied to the event they promote. But then came a tsunami of change. The demographic of the group's core customer base changed. Key source of revenues on both the national and local level changed. And the community support that it had always relied on changed. It started to wane. It became apparent that the organization was in jeopardy. But this organization had a key thing going for it. A passionate group of Tri-Citians who believed in it and who had the courage to reevaluate every facet of how business was conducted. So they made changes. They hired a full-time professional to assist them. They brought forward new ideas and re-implemented some old ones. They even brought back some of their old volunteers and board members as well. That was 5 years ago. Today, the organization is stronger than ever. It is financially sound, produces a quality, family-oriented event that has a diverse group of community sponsors. This year, this organization celebrated its 47th annual event, which attracted over 60,000 attendees and created $2.25 million of visitor spending in our community. Please join me in congratulating the Tri-City Waterfollies Association for their production of 47 years Columbia Cup hydroplane races and being selected this year's tourism champion. This time I'd like to invite Kathy Powell, the event director of the Tri-City Waterfollies, to the stage to say a few words and accept the award. Kathy?
Thank you. I too am a little concerned about following Mr. Worthley with the inflection. It is really a privilege to be up here to accept on behalf of the Tri-City Waterfollies Association. In keeping with the water theme, here we go. This honor belongs to a sea of people going to great depths to provide so many thrills for the community. To demonstrate the ripple effect of the Tri-City Waterfollies, would the members of the Board of Directors and past presidents please stand? Anyone who is a sponsor of the event now or has sponsored in the past, please stand. Anyone in the audience, a volunteer or a past volunteer, please stand. If you've ever been to the boat races, watched the air show, please stand. Thank you. Thank you very much. And please mark your calendars for July 26th through July 28th, 2013 for the 48th running of the Lamb Weston Columbia Cup and the Hapo Over the River Air Show. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could have the Waterfollies people, don't leave, because I would like to take another photo. So if you could come forward, Kathy, just directly after the meeting, I'd like to just do a quick photo op, okay? Also, I'd have a couple housekeeping details, and then you can adjourn to our tourism trade show reception. The tourism trade show takes place in the other half of the ballroom. So you go out the doors you came in at, and it's just the other set of doors just directly to your left. You will receive 2 drink passes and a tourism passport. The drink tickets can be redeemed for a glass of wine or a non-alcoholic beverage, which are available through several stations around the room. As you visit the booths, your passport will be stamped for the designated areas. Once your passport is completed, it needs to be dropped at a basket at the Bureau sales booth, and it's along the far end of the wall, and you'll be entered for some really great door prizes. So be sure to get your passport and have it stamped, put your name on it, and the drawing will take place no later than about 6:15. We want all the passports to be in by 6:15, and the drawing will take place probably about 6:20, 6:30. So that's it for the evening. And again, folks, thank you so very much for showing up. And thank you for being a great member of the Tri-City Visitor and Convention Bureau. Thank you.